Great. Good morning to everybody, and I'm especially delighted to see a lot of young people here, because this is all about you and what you can accomplish in your life. And I think it'll be exciting to listen to someone who made it happen. He walks the talk. So this is all exciting for us today. I'm Kathy D'Antonio. I'm the Associate State Superintendent of Schools. And your simulated workplaces, which I'm so proud of, are part of our division. So we're very excited today. I'm going to introduce you now to somebody that you probably know. We are very fortunate to have his leadership in West Virginia. So without further ado, I want to introduce the State Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Stephen Payne.
Good morning. Good morning. Where are y'all from? Spring Valley. Spring Valley.
Mango.
Okay. All right, great. I get the pleasure to introduce you to just a guy from Canova.
Yes.
All right, and I'm going to do that. Now, they gave me a bio that is that long, but when I asked him just a little bit ago, how would you like to be introduced? He said, just a guy from Canova. So, let me just share a couple of thoughts before we go that direction. I'm Steve Payne. I am State Superintendent of Schools. It's my second time around, as my friend Gordon Gee says, and he's in his second term as president of WVU. And he said, welcome to the club, Mr. Superintendent. I said, what club's that? He said, well, when you screw it up the first time, they have you come back and fix it the second time. So I'm back the second time, and I've learned a lot. One of the things I learned was, when I retired in 2011, I had a chance to go to work in the private sector. So I went to work with a company called CTV McGraw-Hill. It's an assessment company, and we designed assessments and did some stuff like that. And I lasted for about a year in that big corporate structure, which is kind of cool, but things didn't change. They didn't move fast enough. So I actually joined a little startup company. I was on a team to look at purchasing or acquiring, what they call acquiring acquisitions of a small company, a technology-based company for McGraw-Hill. And actually ended up going to work for them. And I was the third employee, Brad, in a little startup company. We were valued about $500,000, and we sold later for about $40 million. And it was a lot of fun. Did that in 2 years. Sold back to McGraw-Hill, actually. Now, well, I haven't done anything like this guy. This guy is a mate from Canova. Canova. I know Wayne County, you know where Canova is, right? Okay, we have Worth County, did I say? Calhoun County? So y'all know where Canova is? Just a little town just to the west of Huntington. Beautiful little town. And he's, in 11 years that he was CEO of Intuit, grew that company by 588%. Now that's a lot of growth. And I also admire the fact that at the peak of their growth, he chose to move on. And I've always heard that when you're on top, that's the best time to leave. And I just admire your work. I don't know if you understand greatness that came out of just a boy from Canova, but you're about to see that. He has mastered the way that they think out there in entrepreneurial endeavors, particularly in the tech space. It's called design thinking. He's working with Marshall to create a school within their business school for design thinking. RVA, I'm sorry, Hobby. I got the name wrong. I'm sorry. Forgive me. Just some great work that's going to be done here, and what we would like to do is create a pathway from pre-K-12 education, particularly from our CTE centers, and more than just that, because everybody in this world today needs to learn to master the 5 steps of design thinking. It's a different way of thinking, and I've always felt that in West Virginia, even though we work closely with the governor, Governor Justice has done a great job of supporting education. And we work closely with the Department of Commerce and Economic Development, Mike Green. We work with Sarah Tucker, the chancellor of the 2 of the 4-year higher education system.
And we try to create those pathways for jobs where commerce is trying to grow those jobs. Sometimes the jobs don't grow fast enough. And there are great opportunities in your own backyard where Apple started in a garage. And we could do that here. You know, the old coach used to tell me, and I know that Mr. Smith played for one of the greatest football coaches probably in the history of the state,
Carl Ward, you know, they always said, you put your pants on the same way everybody else does.
and we need to believe that, develop that confidence, and develop that way of thinking.
So that we may be looking at the next amazing entrepreneurs in the next generation of technology in our world.
And I hope I'm looking at someone right now. Without further ado, and I'm not going to say anything more, he'll probably talk about himself, but we are very fortunate and blessed, Brad, for that you gave up your time today for our young people in the state and for some of our adults who work with those folks. You're an amazing guy, just a guy from Canova, Brad Smith.
Appreciate it. Thank you for that kind introduction, and Dr. D'Antoni and Dean Avi from Marshall and everyone else and all the administrators, and most importantly the students. You really inspire me, and it's good to be home. And I want to tell you that I did grow up in that little town of Canova, and I was very proud on Friday night lights to be able to go to a football game, and Wayne Pioneers, that's where my dad went. That's where all my cousins, my aunts, and my uncles go. Spring Valley Timberwolves are now where my other family members go. And everybody else, we just celebrated you from afar, but you were too far a drive for me to drive at that point. But it is great to be back in the area. The thing that I wanted to talk to you about today is the importance of preparing our students for the next chapter. And you, by the way, are the exemplary examples that everyone else in the country, and quite frankly around the world, are studying. And I'm going to tell you why. I just did 3 TV interviews back there, and they said, why are you here? I said, because the Silicon Valley wants to learn about simulated workplace and what these students are inventing and creating. And when I say the Silicon Valley, I mean Facebook, Google, Apple, all those companies. You are on everyone's radar. But before I get to that and talk about why you are so inspiring and so important, I want to kind of set some context. So I had an idyllic childhood. I grew up in that little town of West Virginia, Canova, population 3,000 if you round up and you count some of the cows. And for 22 years, I dreamed of a way out. I thought there had to be someplace else to go to fulfill my dreams. And I left after I graduated from Marshall, and I've spent every day since looking for a way home. And I can tell you that the world that I entered was very different than the world that you're entering. We now live in a connected global economy, powered by the cloud, with these things called smartphones, smartwatches. We can talk to a computer with Alexa, Siri, Cortana. It's powered by big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning. And all that means one simple fact. The pace of change is now happening 10 times faster than it did just 6 years ago. And that is an incredible difference from the world I entered when I graduated Marshall a couple decades ago. That's a reality that we're going to have to deal with in education, and that's a reality we need to prepare our students for. Which takes me to the second point. And the second point is the state of West Virginia. When I live outside the state and I read the things I read, it breaks my heart. Because all I ever get to read are 48, 49, and 50, and a list of 50. And they don't see what we know is the truth, that there are lots of bright spots in this state. We're tackling big problems. We're now the fastest growing GDP in the first half of this year of any other state in the country. We're closing our broadband connectivity gap. We are inspiring students to create the next Facebook, Google, and Apple through things like simulated workplace. And we have all the talent we need to create an amazing opportunity for our students and for our state. But that story isn't out there yet, which is why I'm here, because I want to shine a spotlight on you. There's another reality that we're facing right now. And the reality is the education system is getting disrupted. If you think about it, we live in a state with a declining population. We live in a state where many students, and maybe some of you think like I did, that you're going to have to leave to go find a good career and to pursue your dream. And then we also have disruption happening in education. You have the flipped classroom. You have something called the Khan Academy. You have charter schools that are now coming in. And by the way, there's a book being written by Harvard that says 50% of all the colleges and universities that exist today will be bankrupt in 10 years because everything's moving online and education's not moving fast enough to adapt to this new world. So that may sound like a pretty pessimistic story when you think about, wow, the world's moving 10 times faster. People look at West Virginia and say maybe they're 48th, 49th, and 50th, and now education's in trouble because everything's changing around them. But I've never been more optimistic, and you know why? If you know your history, when this country was settled, the West Virginia mountains broke the back of common men and women. Most gave up. The only ones who made it here were the hardiest of the hardy. God created a very special human being when he created West Virginians. He created people who were willing to blaze trails instead of follow paths. And when I look ahead, I see two trails. They're going to light the way to a better future, and you are the ones carrying the spotlight. The first is education, and the second is to teach our students how to become entrepreneurs, inventors, and business owners. And that all adds up to the simulated workplace. Now, I'm going to tell you, over the last 3 decades, I've had the chance to first be a product of the West Virginia school system. I graduated from CK, I went to Marshall, and I went out and competed with people from Harvard, Stanford, Yale, MIT, and they would all look at me and say, so, how does it feel to come from a state of West Virginia and to go to Marshall and to be out here with people like Harvard and Stanford and Yale? And I would smile and I say, you know, there really are two differences between my education and yours. Yours cost $150,000 more, and we had a better football team. Now, the second part I can tell you is education is going to need to change. In fact, I've had the chance now to employ students from all around the globe as I've been a part of companies that hire employees. I've also been able to study some of the best practices that are happening, including the design thinking that you heard Dr. Payne just talk about. So I'm going to describe to you what I think education is going to need to start to do differently, and you're going to say, that sounds like simulated workplace. I'm going to make this very short, by the way, because we're going to open it up and do some questions. But let me tell you what this model is. I call it the 4 Ds and the 4 Cs. Now, for all of you who still get report cards, you're going to say, that sounds like mom and dad are going to really take you out to the woodshed. 4 Ds and 4 Cs. And the others are going, nobody takes 8 classes. There's no 4 Ds and 4 Cs. But let me describe what the 4 Ds are. The 4 Ds are the 4 skills that all students are going to need to graduate with if they want to compete in the next generation of jobs. The first D is known as design thinking. I mentioned the world's moving 10 times faster than it was. Business schools are still teaching you how to write a business plan. That business plan becomes obsolete as soon as the last piece of ink is put on that paper, because the world's moving too fast. We need to teach students how to have something called discovery-driven thinking or design thinking, how to develop a hypothesis, how to develop a leap of faith assumption, how to run a rapid experiment, and how to treat success and failure the same way as simply a chance to learn, to quickly pivot, get back up, and go again. And that's the first D. It's called discovery-driven planning, design thinking. The second D is called developer acumen. There's not a home that anybody knows that has not been changed with technology. A smartphone, a computer, you name it. Today, we have to teach kids how ideas get expressed in code. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to be a developer. In fact, I'm going to talk about that in the third D in a minute. But back in my day, we had to learn how to write in cursive as a way to be able to express our thoughts. Even though I wasn't going to become a poet or a journalist, I had to learn to write in cursive. Well, now we need to teach kids how to write code. Even if it's just a couple of semesters, you need to learn how to write code. The third D is design. Design also means arts. It means liberal arts. It means being able to take complicated technology and make it simple. Technology is only useful if it's easy to understand. And you know who figured that out? Apple with one-click Amazon with one-click checkout, and Apple, who's made their stuff so simple that 2-year-olds can navigate and swipe back and forth to find what they want. So you have to be a great artist if you're going to compete. And then the last D is data analytics. And I know that sounds scary, but today you can't manage a baseball team. Anybody here see the movie Moneyball with Brad Pitt? No? All right, well, the Oakland A's are a team in baseball that don't have the money to spend like the New York Yankees. But they figured out how to use statistics, and they couldn't buy the best baseball players, but they could put 9 people on the field who all did something really well but different than somebody else, and they built the best team using math. And they went all the way to the playoffs. And so now everyone in all major sports use data as a way to put together the best team. And so it doesn't matter whether you're managing a baseball team, a business, running a school system, you need to know how to use data. So those are the 4 Ds. Discovery-driven thinking, developer acumen, understanding how to express ideas in code, design to make things simple, and data. Now it takes me to the 4 Cs, which is going to sound like simulated workplace. These are the real issues facing the country right now. 75% of high school students would like to start their own business. They're dreamers. By the way, when I graduated in 1986 from Marshall, 75% of students wanted to go to work for IBM and Microsoft. We wanted to work for a company. You want to start a company. That is an opportunity. 75% of all new jobs in the world are getting created by startups. That's an opportunity. Here's the problem. 75% of all the investors last year put their money in companies in California, New York, and Massachusetts. Even though the dreams are equally distributed and the talent is everywhere, the bankers are only investing in 3 states. Simulated workplace is proving that it can happen anywhere, and now investors are going to start looking here. That's our opportunity. Now, for us to capitalize on that opportunity, we have to shine a spotlight on you in simulated workplace. So I'm going to put a bow around this, and I'm going to tell you that what I'm talking to you about today is not just a pipe dream. It's not just a kid from Canova who believes, gosh, I wish that I could make this different. It's already happening. Ireland did it, the country. 3 decades ago, their industry left them, just like our coal mines right now are becoming less and less part of our economy. 3 decades ago, they suffered from serious addiction issues. In that case, it was alcohol. We're dealing with opioid crisis. And their best and brightest students wanted to go to London and not stay in Ireland. They put together a plan to build an entrepreneurial economy. They changed their education system to prepare their students, and now Ireland is known as the Celtic Tiger, the fastest growing economy in all of Europe. By the way, you know who settled the mountains of West Virginia? The Scots-Irish. Those are our descendants. We're made from the same stock. We've got the same exact opportunities. And you know who's been to Ireland to study everything they did so we can bring it back? The little boy from Canova and a whole bunch of other people. We're going to figure out what our ancestors did, and we're going to figure out how to do it right here. Pittsburgh and Detroit have done exactly the same thing. We're all in. We're all invested in you, and you are the examples everybody else is going to want to follow. So I'm going to wrap it up by saying this. Franklin Delano Roosevelt was our president back in the Great Depression. He said that as parents, we cannot prepare the future for our youth, but we can prepare our youth for the future. Our job is simple. We need to simply open up the playing field, let your freak flag fly, invent any idea you think can change the world, bring investors in here to invest in your ideas, and let you change the world. And that's what Kathy D'Antoni and all of your teachers are doing with Simulated Workplace. I couldn't be more inspired. And with that, I would love to take any question you want to talk about. What's happening in the Silicon Valley? How do you create a job? What's getting in your way? Let's open it up and just have a dialogue. Cool? All right, let's do this. And I better hear from Wayne. I better hear from Spring Valley. I better hear from everybody in this room. Who else did we have? What were the other schools? I heard counties, but I didn't hear schools. What were the schools? Got that? And? Tulsa. All right. Man, I love it when I recognize all the places.
Mingo Central High School.
Mingo Central High School. And you all have uniforms, like everybody's kind of Mac. I love that. Okay. All right, so questions from anybody? Yes?
Hi. First of all, I want to personally thank you as a member of the Wayne High School robotics team for everything that you've done for our program. Secondly, my actual question is, as a senior that's going to be going into college next year, what's your biggest tip for surviving, I guess? And yeah.
Let Let me start first with the Wayne High School Robotics Program. My wife and I fundamentally believe that the only thing we were ever able to achieve in life is because someone saw something in us we didn't see in ourselves, and they invested, and those people were called teachers. And so it's our privilege to come back home and to look for schools where they're saying, hey, I don't have the supplies that I need for the students, and we try to help. And when I got a note from Wayne saying we're trying to build a robotics program, we were happy to be a part of that, but not nearly as happy as I was the next year when I saw the national competition. And I posted that on my social media and shared it with everybody in the world. A little tiny investment to have that big of an impact. So thank you. Now, if I got a chance to go back and think about what I would say to you if I was coming out and about to go into university, I would say two things. First of all is you're the only one who can limit how high is up. You're the only one that can put a cap on your dreams. There's every other avenue in the world available to you. You just have to make sure you're dreaming big. The second thing I would tell you is despite the world of social media and selfies, it is a world of we, not me. Life is a team sport, and a player who makes the team strong is worth more than simply a great player. And so I would say those are the two most important things I would say to someone about to go into college or about to start a career coming out of simulated workplace and say, maybe I just want to go build a business. The first is do not limit your dreams. And the second one is realize you're going to need a team of people around you to make those dreams come true.
Thank you.
You're welcome. How about others? Yes.
How long have you been doing this?
And what is the definition of this? How long have I been doing this?
How long have you been pursuing this kind of path? How long have you been in the entrepreneurial area?
God, it's a great question. It's a long answer, but I'm going to give you the short version of the story. I would tell you my career would say that I've been pursuing this entrepreneurial path since I graduated Marshall. And I went to work for Pepsi and then went into the 7-Up company for 7 years. And then from there I went to a direct mail marketing company before the internet. And then I went into technology. And over the years I've developed these skills of how do you start a business. But my mom and dad would say if you look back at my journey, in the 4th grade I was proud to be a safety patrol guard. And then I was proud to be a lifeguard at Dreamland Pool, but I liked to be on the shallow end of the pool where the kids didn't know how to swim, and I was responsible for making sure they didn't fall in and get hurt. And then I loved being a martial arts instructor and teaching kids self-confidence and self-defense. And if you look back at it over time, I've always been proud to be a supporter of those who needed a champion or needed a voice, and to give them the confidence to say you're capable of doing anything you want, whether it was swimming, crossing the street, or protecting themselves against the bully. So I think I've kind of been at it my whole life, but I wouldn't have known that. It took my mom and dad to tell me that. But I've been figuring out how to actually turn that into something we can teach students for probably the last 15, 20 years. Started when I was 2. How about others?
Actually, so as future teachers, how do you think we could encourage students to do this whole entire entrepreneur thing and try to be more creative?
I love that question. As future teachers, how can we inspire students to do this whole entrepreneur thing and try to be more creative? I shortchanged my opening comments because I like to read an audience and I want to get to the questions and answers. But I said there were 4 Ds and 4 Cs. The 4 Ds are the skills you need. The 4 Cs are actually how we need to change our approach to education. And these are not my ideas. These are ones I borrowed from others, and it's going to be the answer to your question. So I'll spend a second to unpack those. The first is we need to focus on a connected classroom. Online learning, peer-to-peer learning, classroom learning, project-based, roll up your sleeves, learn by doing. No more 45-minute lectures, homework assignment, come in tomorrow for a pop quiz. Why? Here's the little known fact, and you all are a little bit older than this. Scientists have studied the brains of children born after the invention of the iPhone. So they were born after 2007. Right now they're 12 years old. They have discovered something in their brains, the neuroscientists, that no generation before them has ever possessed. It's called continuous partial attention. What that means is they have the ability to have their AirPods in their ears, watch a YouTube video, focus on their English homework, and be having a conversation with their friend, and their parents scream at them and say, I want you to focus on your homework. and the kid says, I am, and they aren't. Because they can do 4 things simultaneously equally well. You have a very close ability to do that because you had a lot of that influence when you were growing up. My generation can't. We learn to multitask. If you hook up these little nodes, our brain goes red and green and red and green, and we can go back and forth fast. You can do multiple things at the same time. That's the gift, but here's the shadow. And these are real facts. 10-year-olds 5 years ago had an attention span of 12 seconds. 10-year-olds now have an attention span of 8 seconds. A goldfish has an attention span of 9 seconds. That doesn't mean kids can't focus. It means we can't expect to teach the same way we used to. You have to let them be using their hands and asking questions and figuring out how to work a project. So we need to have a connected classroom. The second C we need to focus on is to focus on competency and not credit hours. Not taking a whole bunch of classes and sitting there and proving you can withstand all this, but can you actually prove the skill? If you can learn it in 2 weeks, you ought to be advanced. If it takes you 2 semesters, you ought to wait 2 semesters. The third thing is we've got to get off this 4-year college and bust, and we need to start focusing on teaching kids skills in high school. So if you want to come out and pursue your dream, you should be able to do that. And we ought to treat that as an equal opportunity. Germany right now, 60% of its workforce did not go to college. They came right out of VOTAC, and they went out and became a productive nation, and they are equal participants in the community. So we have to celebrate all forms of education. And then the last is called community. And community means we should no longer have students practicing a case study on a hypothetical company. We should be working with the local business in our communities and trying to help them solve their problem and practice our new learning on their business to help them improve their business while we learn our education. So those are the 4 C's. It's a connected classroom that inspires learn by doing. It's focused on competency. As fast as you can learn, you can advance. It's about making sure that we understand the importance of community. And it's about pulling all those pieces together in a way that allow us to treat those who go to college and those who don't go to college as equal participants. And those are the 4 things I think we have to do. And that will change the approach to education. So if I was a teacher or I wanted to be a teacher, I'd think about how to reinvent my classroom to do what you do in simulated workplace. And that is simply to say, here's a big important problem, can you figure out how to solve it? Get with your friends and come in and present your ideas.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry for the long answer, but I had to sneak in the other part of that speech. See how I did that? Yes?
How do you feel about college debt?
I think college debt is a backbreaker. I think it is really heartbreaking, and we're going to have to find a way to solve it. We all know the stats, the numbers on the research study. 49% of kids who set out to do a 4-year degree don't complete it in 6 years. I think 44 million kids are walking around with $1.5 trillion of student loan debt. I saw it takes an average of 38 or 39 years old before you start to pay off your debt. That stuff is just crippling, and we've got to find a way to solve that problem. And I don't have a magic bullet, but my wife and I do try to assist with scholarships and other programs to say, can we be a part of it? But I do think that this is something we're going to have to figure out. And there's lots of alternatives being pursued now, and I'm hopeful that an idea is going to emerge. But right now, it's a sad reality, but there's lots of options to get around student loan debt. You just have to pursue them and look for what scholarships are available, talk to your counselor, and you can find ways around it. How about others? Good questions. Yes?
Is VOTEC more successful than college?
Is VOTEC more successful than college? There is a split camp on this, depending upon what you measure, but I'll tell you what I see and believe. The CEO of Apple, Tim Cook, said he would be building iPhones in the United States if we had more skilled tool and die makers. The problem is you can take the entire United States population of skilled tool and die makers and fit them in a basketball gymnasium. In China, it would take 100 football fields. We don't have as many people today that can do things with their hands. The entire state of Massachusetts had a bunch of electricians that have retired. They came up through the wars and they went to work and they were using their hands and they knew how to do electrical stuff. Now they're retiring and they don't have any electricians to backfill them. They're having to hire electricians out of other states. And so we've created this persona where if you don't go to school, maybe you aren't as relevant, and that is the wrong thing. Now here's the study that just came out of Stanford. An apprentice to a plumber will make more money in their lifetime than someone who graduates with a 4-year degree if it's not a computer science degree. Now that is a very interesting stat that a lot of people don't know. And so you can create a good living, but you're going to need to make sure that the vocational technical focus that you're focused on is the next generation of businesses being created, not the generation that we just came from. So you want to have your VOTech experience focused on some of the things I was talking about. You know, does it develop something that helps machines work? Does it help build robotics? In fact, right now Jeff Bezos from Amazon said he wasn't struggling to hire data scientists, he was struggling to hire truck drivers. And that's a part of Amazon's distribution center. I mean, think about it. They want to get stuff to you in the same day. So yes, they're going to have robots, but they also need people driving trucks. So I think VOTech is an equal opportunity, and there are states and there are countries that have proven it. But you want to make sure you're practicing the skills that are going to be needed in the jobs of the future and not necessarily the jobs of the past. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
A lot of statistics in there, a lot of studies. How about others? Yes?
So I think it's always a great idea to, obviously you've already achieved a lot already, but it's always a good idea to keep setting goals for yourself even if you've already accomplished goals. So what are some of your goals for the future that you have now?
My goals for the future. So I've had the privilege of working with people smarter than me, trying to solve problems that'll never be solved in a lifetime, and that kept me excited and engaged. And I love the comments that were said earlier by Dr. Payne. I had the greatest job of a lifetime. I'm so proud of Intuit, and I'm still the chairman of the board. But I didn't want to be that athlete that stayed too long, that people would start to say, I remember when they used to be able to do that, now they're a little bit slower. And I didn't want to be the athlete that went and put about 3 other jerseys on and played for 3 other teams. And you said, Brett Favre should have always been a Packer. I can't believe he's a Viking now. I can't believe he's a Jet. So I wanted to stay with an Intuit jersey. But then I wanted to take the time that I used to spend being the CEO and do something else. And Mark Twain had a famous quote: the 2 most important days in your life are the day that you're born and the day that you discover why. And I've been on a journey to rediscover my why. And the answer was right here. I want to be a champion for the overlooked. I want to be a warrior for human dignity and human potential. And I want to level the playing field of opportunity for everyone who has the dream and the willingness to try. And I didn't have to look any further than Kathy D'Antoni in the simulated workplace effort, right here in my home state of West Virginia. So I'm spending as much time as I can back here to bring everyone from the Silicon Valley that I can here, and to spend time with Marshall University to try to teach the Silicon Valley techniques, and to spend time with investment bankers and venture capitalists to say, I want you to come and look at what's getting built right here. And I want to figure out if together we can create a new chapter for our state and a dream where you don't have to go someplace else if you don't want to. That's my next chapter.
Thank you.
Thank you for the question. Others? Can I share the most important leadership lesson I ever learned? It's a story. I had 2 daughters. They now graduated university and one went on to law school. But when they were little, we lived in Atlanta, Georgia, because after I left West Virginia, I moved 10 different states with my career. Got moved all the time. My girls never got to go to the same school 2 years in a row for the first 5 years. So they really paid the price as we moved around. But when we got to Atlanta, my youngest daughter was about 7, and she decided she wanted to play soccer. And down in Atlanta, if you hadn't started playing at the age of 3, by the time you're 7, they're bending it like Beckham, like they're already just unbelievable. And being the kid, the parents that we were, we didn't want her to lose her confidence, so we found a special league where all the late bloomers and the people who hadn't started were starting to play. And like all parents do at that age, and remember she was my little girl that wanted to make sure everything was new. We bought her a new uniform, we bought her a new ball, we wrote her name in magic marker on the ball so no one would confuse her ball with anybody else's. We show up 10 minutes early to practice. All the other parents are 10 minutes early to practice. The kids start to get out there with their new uniforms. They start to kick each other's ball. They start to scream and cry at each other because they're smudging the magic marker and somebody's kicking their ball. The parents don't know what to do. This is a hot mess. The coach pulls up in an SUV, gets out, has a bag of balls over one shoulder and a soccer net over the other, walks right past the parents, goes out on the field, puts the soccer goal at the end of the field, and comes over to drop down the bag of balls. And every kid on the team stood and focused on that soccer net. and they kicked all the balls into the net as quickly as they could, and they jumped up and high-fived each other like they just won the World Cup. And that let me know at that moment what leadership is. Make the goal clear and get out of the way. Greatness already exists in everybody. If you simply show them what success looks like and then get out of their way, they'll be successful. Now the coach did what all coaches do after that. Now that everyone was clear that that's what success looks like, he spent the rest of the season teaching each player how to get better, and then teaching them how to play as a team, so that collectively they got better. But that's what simulated workplace is. Right now, you're being given an environment. You're able to tackle a problem you think is important, whether it's this horrible situation with SIDS, or the work you're doing with farmers. I mean, all the stuff that you're doing to basically solve problems that the best scientists in the world can't figure out, and you're looking at it with fresh eyes. And we just need to get out of your way and let you do your magic, and then find a way to give you the resources you need. And that's what gets me excited. And that's why I fully believe in simulated workplace. And we said, hey, how do we take this outside of the state of West Virginia? Kathy said, I'm just trying to get it all in West Virginia right now. Let us build it here. But the secret's already out, because you're doing magical things. And I wish I could have brought with me today Mark Zuckerberg and Sheryl Sandberg and Larry and Sergey and all the others I get the chance to be out in the valley with. Because if you got to hear from them what you're hearing from me, you would be blown away. Because they see the same potential. So don't limit your dreams. Just do what you're doing and know that magic is going to happen. Questions? All right, go one in the back.
The quote that you gave from Mark Twain earlier is one of my favorite quotes, but what would you say to someone who's trying to find their why?
What would you say to someone trying to discover their why? Well, I just went on this journey, and so I do have a way to answer that question. And I can tell you that it applies to you right now, and I wish I would have known it at your age, and I didn't figure it out in my mid-50s. So the way I figured that out is I went and interviewed people who were in their late 70s. These are individuals that are still living incredibly healthy lives. They're full of vitality, and they have these thriving things they're doing right now in their life, even though they used to be CEOs or they used to be NFL quarterbacks. And I talked to everybody. And I discovered there's 4 questions that they actually told me I needed to answer to discover your why. The first is, think about the things today in your life that you have deprioritized or you've sacrificed to get to where you are. That if you could, you would make them a higher priority in your life going forward. As you might imagine, a dad who traveled all over the world, I wish I'd spent more time with my daughters and my wife. And so now I'm figuring out ways to do things where we can build things together. The second question is to think about your life and think about when you're full of the most passion and purpose. This is not a job. It's not, hey, when I'm a cheerleader or I'm a quarterback. But think about those moments where you are full of so much passion that it's almost hard to contain your excitement. And that's when I discovered things like being a safety patrol guard and being a martial arts instructor and being a lifeguard. And I figured out, wow, I've always liked working with someone who needed a little bit of shade so that they could grow and become the thing they wanted to be. The third and fourth question is going to be one that maybe you have to think a little harder at. In what environments are you at your best? And in what environments does it drain your energy and you know you're not as good as you could be? And the best analogy I can give you is you all probably, maybe you still remember. Do you all know who Michael Jordan was? Okay. Maybe because of Space Jam, but I know he had retired before you all got to age. Michael Jordan was the greatest basketball player of all time. He's still known as the standard by which all basketball players will ever get measured. LeBron James, Steph Curry, everyone is trying to be Michael Jordan. They had a commercial with Nike back in the day called Be Like Mike. He was also a good enough athlete to play Major League Baseball. He actually made a team. He wasn't the best in baseball like he was in basketball, but he was athletic enough to be a good baseball player. Today he likes to play golf, and everyone likes to play with him because he likes to bet, and they love to beat him and take his money. And in football, I suspect if he put on a helmet, the Spring Valley Timberwolves would beat him to a pulp. Because he's an athlete optimized for a basketball court, not for a football field. That doesn't mean he's not a world-class athlete. He's still one of the most iconic names around the world. That he figured out in what environment his gifts came to life. You need to think about that. So if you think about how to discover your why, think about the things in your life you want to make sure you make a higher priority. Think about the times in your life where you're full of excitement and passion, what those things are that you dream about. Hey, I love music, I love acting, I love to do whatever. Think about the environments where you are absolutely able to be your best and the environments that you're not. And the answer will go right through there and you'll know what your why is. And then I would just stay stubborn on that. Just stay focused on that. Keep that as your true north. And I wish I would have known that sooner. Yes. Your hand's slowly coming up. I'm going to give you credit for that.
Yeah, I got nervous.
That's okay. Why are you nervous? How would you have to be up here in front of everybody? This is scary.
Yeah, I give you respect. I couldn't do it. But as a future educator, there's a lot of stuff that is kind of pushing me away from it more and more every day. As you said before, technology is being really advanced and stuff. And my parents don't think me going into education is a very good idea, as we are getting more advanced every day. So what could I tell them that I can convince them that being a teacher, especially in West Virginia, would be a good idea?
Did everyone hear the question? Aspires to be an educator, but as the world becomes more technological, not sure, her parents aren't sure that's the right dream to pursue, and she's questioning now whether she should be an educator, given that reality. I think there's two sides of the coin. One side of the coin is our country has this completely backwards. If you go to Asia, the highest paid people are teachers and people who actually inspire in others. They're medical, they're doctors, and they're teachers. And the lowest paid people are business people. Because we're replaceable, the teachers are not, they shape minds. But the second thing I would tell you is the greatest mentor I ever had is a guy by the name of Bill Campbell. And if you get a chance, I would ask you to read the book, The $1 Trillion Coach. If I can give you 2 minutes on Bill Campbell, then I'll give you the message that I want to tell you. Bill Campbell used to coach football at Columbia University. He went on to work at Kodak, used to be a camera company before the smartphone. He then went out to an agency, J. Walter Thompson, and then got recruited by a gentleman by the name of Steve Jobs at Apple to be the very first head of sales and marketing. He went on to work at Apple for years and make it an iconic company and became Steve Jobs' best friend. Ended up on Steve Jobs' board, on the Apple board. He became Intuit, my company's second CEO and our chairman. And people began to discover something about Bill. He became known as the coach, not because he was a football coach, but because he could take young executives and teach them how to be better versions of themselves. He then took some other people under his wing. Anybody ever heard of Jeff Bezos? Amazon, he coached him. Larry and Sergey, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, founders of Google, he coached them. Sheryl Sandberg, Facebook. Brad Smith. He became the coach of everyone in the Valley, and every company he touched went to market caps that eclipsed $1 trillion, which has never been done. He passed away just a few years ago. But Bill coached me for 16 years, and here's the answer to your question about why be a teacher. Bill said to me once, it doesn't matter if you're in finance, you're HR, it doesn't matter if you work in technology or not, you are in the people business. The number one asset any company has are the people. And do you know who actually shapes those people? Teachers. I would never have done anything in my life if I didn't have a teacher who believed in me. There is no more noble profession than being a teacher. And I can tell you there's lots of other ways to count success than money. And I hope the money will someday come to teachers. But in the meantime, you should know that when people will reflect back on their lives, they'll always remember you because you shaped them and made them who they are. So please follow your dreams and tell your mom and dad I'm sorry for disagreeing with them. You're welcome. Any others? Yes.
What would your advice and what would you say to people that say they would like to live in the state of West Virginia for more opportunities?
I think everyone should pursue their dreams, and like all young people, I wanted to know what was on the other side of the mountains. And I wanted to go out, and like I said, I've lived in 10 states, and I've done business around the globe. I've been in almost every single country in the world. I've gotten to see a lot of things, and I've learned a ton of stuff. But I can tell you this, while my body left, my heart never did. And it's okay to go out and experience life, but I wanted to make sure that you just know it's your choice. When I did it, I had a little bit of curiosity and a whole lot of there's nothing here. And I was wrong. There was something here. What was here were great people and lots of opportunities and lots of problems that needed solved. And if I had spent my time, what I've done elsewhere right here, I believe we could have built some stuff. And so I would tell you to pursue your dream, to go out and never say never, and always remain open to coming home. So if you go out and you discover what I did, you may want to come back. And by the way, that helps the state. Because what ends up happening is you can tell others that are in the same place, hey, I went out there, it looks good, but it's not as great, so you just may want to stay here. But I say go explore. Life is an adventure. Somebody told me once that a career is like a roller coaster. It's going to have highs, it's going to have lows, it's going to whip you around, your neck's going to get stiff. And then when you're finished up, you can't wait to ride again. The problem is you don't get to ride a second time. So ride the son of a gun and just scream, raise your hands up and just go for it. That's the blast. I am. What others? I know you're all thinking, man, this guy's trouble. He's definitely from Canova. Yes.
I have another question, sorry.
Oh, good. I love questions from the Wayne Pioneers and the Robotics Club, so go for it.
This one has more to do with your success as a businessman. And that's, like for me, for example, I have really big dreams. I have a lot of projects that I would love to pursue. But actually getting out there and executing them always seems to be an issue. Always like getting the resources that I need and stuff like that. What advice would you have for me and other people who have these dreams to get out there and make the world better?
It's a great question. It's actually what we're working with Marshall University on tomorrow. It's called design thinking, but let me tell you what the number one technique is in entrepreneurship and how you get somebody to invest in your idea. It's called evidence-based assertion. Evidence-based assertion. Said another way, your passion and your PowerPoint will not convince anybody to invest. But a prototype and an example that 10 people are already using it and their lives have gotten better, and you show that to an investor and they'll say, wow, I want you to build a better version of that, here's some money. So running experiments and proving it. In fact, everything in the Valley, we now require people to say, because of this, I believe this is possible. Because of this experiment I ran, because of this research study I found, because of the fact I've worked in 5 companies and we did it in those 5 companies, I believe we should do this. The best experiment to run is one someone's already ran for you, and if not, you should run one yourself. So that's what I would encourage you to do. Don't give up on your dream. Figure out how to build a scrappy prototype. You can build scrappy prototypes. You know how long it took to build? Everybody heard of Google Glass? Google's inventing that computer that you actually just touch on the side and the screen. It's almost like something from the Matrix. You can actually see the computer screen. The inventor is Tom Chi. He works with Intuit as a consultant. It took them 40 minutes to invent the first prototype of Google Glass. A pair of sunglasses, a coat hanger, and a piece of colored acetate. And in 40 minutes, they proved it, and they got the investment. So you don't want to have sophisticated prototypes. You want to build something scrappy, give it to people, and show that they use it, and then show that to an investor, and they'll invest money. So get scrappy. That's what I'd say. Get scrappy. Yes?
I was wondering when you think is a right time for students our age to get into the workforce field, because I'm 15 and I'm already working at a pizza place, a family-owned company, so I was wondering when you think it's right for kids to get ready to go to work.
I think it's a personal decision depending upon what your passions are. I'm a big believer, though, that you can never be too soon in doing something that involves the team. That's what a workplace does. It comes with responsibility. It comes with working with other people. Some people will do that through sports, through cheerleading, through band, where they have to be a part of understanding some instructions, showing up on time, being a part of a team, and playing their part. You can also do that in the workplace. And I think that's the most important thing, is you can never start that too soon, because that becomes the secret that you will follow the rest of your life. The thing I love about working early is it teaches responsibility. One of the most underestimated things about being a good leader is first being a good follower. And if you can show up and be someone that does your part, in fact, I have 3 tips. People always say, what do you wish you had told your 18-year-old self? My first tip is it's not me, it's we. The second tip is it's not your IQ, it's your CQ. It's your curiosity quotient, your willingness to ask questions and ask why, not try to have all the right answers. And the third is to volunteer for the job that nobody else wants. And the reason why I say volunteer for the job that nobody else wants is because usually it doesn't have enough resources, it's probably got a high risk of failure. But if you go in, you're gonna learn a ton, and then pretty soon your bosses are gonna say, she keeps volunteering for all those bad jobs, let's give her a good one. Because she really is a good team player. She's willing to sign up and help us in every situation we have. And by the way, anybody who goes to Silicon Valley, all the young students who come out want to work on artificial intelligence, machine learning, and mobile phones. No one wants to work on the desktop or the old technology. But you know who usually gets promoted the fastest? The ones who are willing to work on the old stuff first. Because that's where most of the customers are. They haven't all moved to the new stuff yet. So that's my tip is get in the workplace or get in a team environment, whether it's some sort of band or sports or cheerleading or whatever, and learn how to be a good follower before you want to be a good leader. And then volunteer for the job nobody else wants. Be the person someone can turn to every time to try to get tough stuff done. You will excel. Somebody else had their hand. Yes, sir.
What skills are important in the business world that maybe we aren't being taught in school?
What are the skills important in the business world that you're not being taught in school? This right here is going to make your teachers and your parents crazy. Failure is a better teacher than success. Every CEO that stands up, and I wish I would have done this when Dr. Payne introduced me. I wish they would have introduced all the mistakes I've made, all the things I screwed up, all the business decisions that went wrong, because I learned more from my scar tissue than I did my ribbons and my trophies. And in fact, design thinking is designed to teach you how to fail fast so you can succeed faster. Let me give you 2 examples to make that true. Everybody heard of Einstein? Yeah? Everybody heard of Thomas Edison? Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. How many attempts to invent the light bulb? Anybody know? 10,007. So one day, a young New York Times reporter interviewed Thomas Edison and said, how did it feel to fail 10,006 times? And he said, young man, I didn't fail 10,006 times. I proved 10,006 ways that it wouldn't work. Why is that important? The most popular book in the Silicon Valley right now is called a book, Getting to Plan B, by Randy Komisar. You know what it teaches? Only 1 in 10 companies that succeed in the Silicon Valley succeeded on their original idea. The other 9 successes had to pivot to another idea because their original one failed. So 90% of the businesses that you read about in all these magazines failed their way to success. So I would say the most important thing we need to start to do in school is to treat education as an experiment to advance your competency and to teach you how to persevere through failure. The other thing I would say is we need to learn to lead with questions and not answers. That's the difference between a curiosity quotient and an intellectual quotient, CQ versus IQ. Now, that takes a foundational rethinking. Right now, everyone who does assessments, tests, are saying, Brad, we're no longer going to let you talk to the education system. But I think it's important because when you get into business, you're going to find out that it's about how quickly you can fail and get back up and figure out a new idea.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, I know I see some fidgeting, so I want everybody out, but I see a hand up over here.
Okay. It seems like everyone wants to be an artist or sing or something. I mean, that's all of Hollywood, New York and stuff. Something that everyone's trying to do, how would you actually get out of the shadows?
And it goes beyond singer and art. It's anything you want to do. How do you get out of the shadows? I would say every one of us is born with some greatness in us. The Almighty put it in us. Our parents cultivated it in us. Our friends reinforced it when they saw it. When no one was around in the shower, in the mirror, we practice it, whether it's speeches or it's singing or it's acting or whatever it might be, or it's sports. And what you have to do is figure out how to do that your way. That's how you get out of the shadows. Don't try to be somebody else. And I'll give you 2 stories on this one. I graduated from Marshall. My first employer sent me to New York 2 weeks of vocal training to get rid of my West Virginia accent. Now, I don't know how I sound to you, but everywhere else they say, well, that failed. And for a year and a half in my career, I walked around with my head hung down because I realized I didn't get rid of my accent, and I thought I'm going to be a failure. And then I started to notice something. When I was asked to give a public speech, people would come up and say, who was that young boy with that southern twang? And I realized it wasn't a bug, it was a feature. And I began to play it up. I mean, believe me, the next speech I gave, I had a lot of West Virginia accent. And people go, whoa, who was that guy with that West Virginia accent? And the further I got away from West Virginia, the more cool it became. So be yourself, be authentic to who you are, and find out that special gift. And if you become the best you can be, the rest will be history. You'll break through the clutter. It's the people who try to be somebody else that don't succeed. You stay in the shadow of that person you're trying to be. I'll save you the second story because it gets even longer, so the one made the point. Yes?
How would you, is this working right?
It is.
Sorry. How would you say that young people should go about identifying a problem that needs fixing if they're struggling to find an idea, struggling to find something that they can work into a business that they want to make?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. That's what we're going to spend some time tomorrow. You heard the 5 steps of design thinking. It's called deep customer empathy, but let me give you the shorthand version of how you discover a problem. The last reason to not start a business is because you don't have an idea. What you have to do is look around at all the problems that surround you in life that are not getting solved well. And you don't do that through research, you do that through observing with your eyes. You start to see people who have to do things and they grumble. Listen to your parents as they're trying to open a box of Tide and they have to use a screwdriver. Or you see somebody whose iPhone isn't working and they call for the kid to come in and say, show me how to do this again, hon. You're like, Mom and Dad, don't you know how to work that phone yet? What are the things that get in our way in everyday life? Sometimes there's huge problems, opioid addiction, sudden infant death syndrome. Sometimes there's smaller problems, like why is it that I can't get my key to work? And then think about what idea you would have that would make that easier. And that is actually how invention happens. It's taking something existing that isn't working the way it should and figuring out how to make it better. And that is how you identify a problem. And here's an example. Intuit started 36 years ago with a piece of personal financial software on a computer because our founder watched his wife try to pay the bills with the family checkbook, and it was hard. And he said there has to be a better way. So he and a Stanford engineering student built the first piece of software for our company, and it became Quicken. Now, 3 years into selling this to homes to help them manage their banking account and pay their bills, they did research, and it said half of the people using it were business owners. And so our founder said, don't pay any attention to that. They're using the product wrong. And everyone said, okay, so we kept selling it to families. And the next year, the research study came in and said half the people using this product aren't families, they're business owners. And that time he said, wow, there's got to be something here. Let's go knock on their doors and ask them if we can come in and watch them to see if they really are using it. And what he discovered was that business owners did not pay attention in college in their accounting class. And the only thing they were being sold to run a business was accounting software, and they had slept through class. So they were buying the home version, which you could use to pay your bills to run their business. And so our founder took that idea, which was using his eyes, and he invented the first accounting software without any accounting in it. That's what we called it. The first accounting software with no accounting, called QuickBooks. It is the #1 world seller in software today for small businesses. That first piece he wrote, Quicken, for the family, is $100 million. The second piece we wrote, QuickBooks, which is for small businesses, is almost $4 billion. And that's by not listening to what people say, but going and observing what they're doing, and then saying, let's turn that into a product. So that's how I would come up with an idea. Just look around at the things that get in people's way and say, is there a better way to solve that?
Thank you.
Cool, you're welcome. Okay, going once, going twice. Any other questions? I do want to say, oh yes, I'm sorry. We got one more for over here.
I would like to ask if you have any advice to someone who doesn't really know what they want to do exactly. They have lots of passions, but they just can't settle on something.
Yes. You sound like me. I remember sitting in the swing in the backyard talking to my dad. I had just graduated. I had an opportunity to work with the Herald-Dispatch. I had an opportunity to work with Pepsi coming off of campus. Now I know a little bit later, this was after Marshall, not after high school. And I had grown up wanting to be a marine biologist because I loved lifeguarding at Dreamland. I loved water and figured a scuba tank would be even cooler. Or I wanted to be a writer. I loved to express my ideas in songs and things like that. And I had these two jobs, and I wasn't sure which one. And I asked Dad, how do I choose? Because if I choose wrong, my life is over. And he laughed. He's like, man, this thing's like a roller coaster ride. You're not going to screw it up, but I'll help you. And he gave me 3 tips. The first is which one makes your heart beat the fastest, which kind of goes back to this, how do you discover your why? Think deeply about the things in your life that give you the most passion and the most excitement, that you don't have to try hard to focus because you love it so much. Then the second thing he said is be a part of a group that surrounds you with people smarter than you so you're always growing, and maybe in a company that will challenge you by putting you in situations where you have no idea what to do and you're going to have to make mistakes and fail so you get smarter, because that will keep you on your learning curve. And then the third piece of advice was the most important. Never take a job for the money or the title, because both will change over time. If you figure out the things that give you the most passion and you surround yourself with people smarter than you, and they put you in situations where you're going to have to try different things that you've never done before and you're going to fail, then you will figure out your why and you'll know what to pursue. But don't take the first job offer because you need the money. Don't take the job title that says you can be a manager tomorrow versus this. Really make sure it's something you feel like you're going to enjoy doing. And I didn't do that throughout my entire career. I took a few offers because they gave me a bigger title and more money, and those were the most miserable years of my life. So I know it's an easy thing to say and a hard thing to do, but you really have to kind of look inside. Okay, you're welcome. I know there's nothing harder than having somebody stand up here and say the secret to the next chapter is not to lecture for 45 minutes, but to let people do, and then you sit in a seat while I talk for an hour and a half. But I meant what I said when I started, and this is not to try to pump you up and then have you go back and think that it's not true. You're doing amazing things. You're doing what the greatest inventors in the world did out of their dorm rooms and out of their garages, and you're doing it earlier. You're doing it in high school. And you've got a structured program right now that's trying to surround you with resources, and a state that's investing in you, and a guardian angel in Kathy D'Antoni, who's doing everything she can to knock down the barriers and to get people to come in and look at this program and try to help you advance it. But with all those people doing great things, you're doing the greatest of all. When I saw and heard about the inventions that are coming out of your programs, these are things that people are not figuring out in some of the greatest research and development parks around the world. So stay on it. Don't give up faith. Know that you have everything in you to be successful. And if you stay on it, people are going to show up and help you. I love you like brothers and sisters. I root for all your teams. And remember, their education costs $150,000 more, and we have better football teams. Thank you.
I wish you had an opportunity to meet each and every one of you, because what he just said is correct. You're a phenomenal layer of young people here. And you said something about multitasking. I feel that in my head because I forgot at the beginning to do something that I needed to do. And what that was to thank Marshall Brad Smith Schools of Business, Dr. Amy that's back here, Ben Ng, where's Ben? Over here, all from Marshall, also from my staff, Melissa Keating, and Angie's on vacation, Tara Combs, who helped put all of this together. There you are, back there. But this was for you, young people, because I've seen you. I've talked to most of you that are sitting in this room, and I've visited your classrooms. You have the whole world ahead of you, and West Virginia can reap benefits. So thank you for coming, and your teachers for coming and bringing you. And you just have a great year. We'll be out to see what all you're gonna come up with this year, Mr. Gibbs. Thank you very much. Thank you.